Okay, today is December the 6th, 2019. My name is Kara Newrohr. I'm here at the Oklahoma State University Library with former President Dr. Jim Halligan, who is participating in an O State Stories interview today. Thank you for coming for the interview. I appreciate it.
I'm flattered and honored. Thank you very much for thinking of me.
Okay, we're going to start with a little biographical information about you. Where were you born and raised?
Well, I was actually born out in the country, and this was 1936, so that's a long time ago. And so, my father kept the farm until about 1938 plus, okay? And then, as was happening at that time, a lot of the banks failed. So the bank failed, and they called the note. They couldn't pay the note. And now I want to say at the beginning now, I think I've been extraordinarily fortunate in life. I'm not complaining about what happened. It was just an exciting time, and I was delighted to be able to live it. They were consolidating the schools, and so there were some small country school houses that were available. And they moved one of those into a little town which is nearby called Moreland, Morland. And let's see, it was 7 blocks, six blocks, and then another little tiny segment of a block, and probably 100 people or something like that. Delightful place to grow up. And so there were 5 children. I was the baby of the family, and they had a judgment against my father, so he couldn't own anything. He couldn't own a car, couldn't own a house or anything like that. And then there were 4 boys in a room about half the size of this room, and 2 beds, and no running water. We had a pot, and my sister was on the other side of Patsy got everything because she was a girl. She was on the other side of the chimney. And so they had cut a hole in the floor so that some of the heat could come up from the stove down. There wasn't a stove upstairs, and there was no covering to the beams or anything. You could just see the roof, okay? We put it together. And so it was really a sort of a wonderful place to grow up. It was very good for me in retrospect, in that everybody had to work. We had big gardens.
Did you have a paying job in town that you worked
Well,
at?
what we did was there was something called the Dairy. This is a nearby town, all right, not in Moreland, but in Fort Dodge, was 6 miles away. And so there was something called the Dairyette. And my brothers, Ray and Billy, they were the cooks, and we sold root beer and ice cream and hot dogs and that sort of stuff. And at that time, you would go out on a little tray and put it on the car window. I don't know if you remember that or
Yes,
not.
I do remember.
Okay, so I was just a little kid at the time, and so I'd get good tips.
Oh.
Okay,
Mhm.
so then they found me to make me share the tips. But in any event, so that's my earliest memories of sort of doing that. And the local cemetery for our little church was a mile and 3/4 out of town, and we would push our lawnmowers out and mow that, and we kept all that cemetery trimmed up, etc. And that gave us money. We didn't wear shoes in the summer; everybody went barefoot, and never felt poor. Knew that we had to play it awfully close to the vest, but never felt poor. And we made our way through. We got a check at the end for mowing. We mowed this church property and the cemetery. And they would always give, my father had a lot of trouble with alcohol. After he lost the farm, and things weren't going well, so to speak. he was a hired hand on farms at that time, and they didn't pay
No.
real well for that kind of business. And but if you've been on a ranch, people can work very hard. So at any event, so all of us had jobs of one kind or another, and I look back as saying I had almost an idyllic childhood in that we were always working, and I can remember we used to grow enough potatoes. We dug a basement, and we had a wheelbarrow. We'd wheelbarrow, and then so we always had enough to eat, but never more than we needed to eat. So I went through. I worked, and the day I turned 16, I could get my driver's license. And you couldn't work sort of in Iowa until you were 16. But I had some jobs such that I had enough money. I bought a car the day I turned 16, my own car. And my mother, my mother went into the wheelchair. She got rheumatoid arthritis, and she went into the wheelchair probably when I was 12 or 13, something like that, in her hands. I always see these advertisements these days, and I think wish she had been around then. But anyway, we just took care of ourselves. Everybody left when you got to be 18. You left the family, and so the last 2.5 years, I was sort of alone with my father and my mother, and my mother was. Never really stood up, could stand erect, so to speak, after I was 13, 14, something like that. But remarkably tough, spirited individual, and never complained. Very, very religious, and that was a blessing for her, in that it gave her comfort that eventually she'd be rewarded. And the Second World War was really wonderful for us, in that my father could get employment before he couldn't secure lasting employment. And so he got a job in something called Rosedale Creamery. And I had worked there. In those days, everybody had milk in bottles, and so I would hitchhike into. Everybody hitchhiked in those days, and I would hitchhike into town, and I'd get there about 5:30 and on the weekends, and help a guy. I'd pick up all the bottles, and he would deliver the milk, and I'd have the bottles all arranged and back in, and so it was. We just everybody made their own money, and it was just assumed that was it. So because my father just had a real difficulty in with alcohol. So then when I was well, let's see, I should say that the sort of the light of my life always has been my wife Ann. In that we were in this little school, I think there was 15 in our class, something like that. And I was class president, she was class vice president. But her family was just idyllic. In other words, they were stable, and my father had abused my mother, and they didn't have any of that. Everything was just, he just looked at it and said, "Oh my God, this is the way some people can live." And so then when I graduated from high school, everybody left, and so my two brothers who had been in the Air Force came back home. And so I said, "I'm out of here and I'll never be back." And so they took care of the situation with my father. They just told him if he ever came home drunk, they would pound him into the ground. And they did that twice, where he couldn't stand up. And he stopped drinking. So it was but I couldn't really do that because I have a name
Right.
at those.
Mhm.
But in any event, so I went to the Air Force.
What year did you graduate high school?
1954, which is.
Were you and Ann high school sweethearts?
Yeah, yes,
Mhm.
yeah. And so I went to the Air Force. It was really many things changed my life, but that certainly did because I went through basic training
Where was
in
that?
Lackland Air Force Base. And when you go in, you take a battery of tests. And after I'd been there, I think about 7 weeks, 8 weeks, something like that, the squadron commander called me in. Now, when you're an airman basic and the squadron commander calls you in, you say, "Oh man, I'm in trouble here." But in any event, he said to me that I had done very well on these tests, and that they, if you do as if you're among this cohort, then you can go to something called a washout school. And he said, if you go to the washout school, he said, almost everybody washes out of the washout school.
How do you spell that? I'm not familiar with that word.
WASH, like wash. I'm going to wash out my shirt.
Mhm.
It's a washout school. So you're sort of like I was at that time. But he said, look, he said, when you go there, the odds are 100 to 1 you're going to wash out. And therefore, you can choose any program you want in the Air Force.
Oh.
It'll be your choice.
Mhm.
Okay. So I said, hey, that sounds pretty good. So in any event, I went to Kelly Air Force Base, which was also in San Antonio. And it was amazing. I mean, they asked you how you would like your eggs fried, and it was astonishing. And so the first day there was 39 guys in a room, and this major, I think it was, it's things up here, came in and said, we're going to play King of the Hill, and we're going to play until there's one guy left in the room. You take a test every day. You fail 2 days in a row and you're gone.
Oh.
Okay? And so let the fun begin.
Were they written tests or physical tests?
No, they were all guys like me who had done well on these tests. And so there's 39 of us in there. And so the first, my high school English teacher, undoubtedly, her name was Mildred Parr. Undoubtedly, he was one of those people who really sort of changed my life. And that she said one day, Jimmy, you got to go to college. You just got to go. I don't know how you're going to go. I know you don't have any money, et cetera, but you got to go to college. In any event, I didn't pay as good attention as I should have in English, but in any event, so they sort of checked you out in English for, I guess, about a week. And then they came in. I had never heard of the Cyrillic alphabet, but in any event, they started, they explained that this is the Cyrillic alphabet, and these are the languages that are that use this alphabet. And so tomorrow your lesson will be in Russian. And so they came in and started talking in Russian, writing things down, etc. in Russian. And boy, the room started, they started to cut down the number in the room. But sort of cutting to the chase, there were 2 guys left in the room. Me and a gentleman, wonderful man, by the name of Wallace Johnson. And he was an African-American individual. And I had never been around an African-American, this little tiny Iowa town. So, but in any event, the same major came in and said, we're going to take both of you. So then we said, so what does that mean? Mm-hmm. And he said, well, you're going to get a choice here, so you need to decide. I wish I could remember all of them, but I remember there was Albanian and Lithuanian, and I had no idea. And I know Bulgarian was one of them. And so in any event, you could select. If I'm going on too long,
no, you're fine. This is interesting.
In any event, so Bulgarian was taught at the University of Indiana. And so I'm sitting there in this room.
So you leave Texas, you go to Indiana?
Yeah, well, so I said I'm a Bulgarian.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in for Bulgaria.
Mm-hmm.
So I go to Indiana University, which was just a spectacular experience. Just a spectacular experience. And let's see, there was a dozen of us, if I remember correctly, 10 to 12 of us in a room. And when we got in there, another, this time was Light Colonel, in fact, came in and said, as of this moment, no English spoken at any time inside this classroom. And you'll be in here 8 hours a day with your instructors, and you can speak Bulgarian here, and we will segment you in the residence halls such that when you're in the residence halls, you can only speak Bulgarian, okay? And you can't speak it anywhere else. You speak it somewhere else, you're gone, okay?
Was this your first time on a college campus?
Yes. So, so the long and the short of it was, we began this process, and Zlatanovs were wonderful people, and we started a lot like them. That's Svetlana, that's light, okay. That's Vratata, that's the door, okay. So we started out that way, okay. Mm-hmm. And before very long, I mean, if you do it 8 hours a day, so we sort of kept saying, what the hell? Well, the other thing is, there are classifications of secrets that are above top secret, and so they were in the process. When I hitchhiked home one weekend, some people said, the FBI has been around here on New Halligan. Well, it turns out that you couldn't have any relatives anywhere in a country that would be of concern, that they could use to exploit you. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so 2 guys, I guess, were taken out of our program. I said, sorry, we can't have you. But there was Halligans were, but anyway. So let's see, after about 4 months, I guess, they said, tell us when you begin to dream in Bulgarian, when you wake up and you realize you're dreaming in Bulgarian. And it was about 4 months that most of us started kicking over. Mm-hmm. And so then we began, we had to be able to, it's sort of like a southern accent. You had to, like bread in one sort of a mountain chain, not quite, but one side of the mountains, another side of the mountains in Bulgaria. And so bread is chleb and chleb on this side, okay? So we had to be able to switch from one dialect to the other. And they brought another guy in, and he was from the other dialect. And so we had to be able to talk to him, and he was supposed to feel comfortable that we were part of his camp and this sort of stuff. And then I guess after about 7 months, they said, we were learning things like, you could say, what's the orientation of the runway at Plovdiv? And I knew it. Mm-hmm. We were learning all kinds of...
And you were still in Indiana?
Oh, yeah.
For this training?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so the bottom line of it all was, we then had to sit in a room and no pencil, no paper, and listen to the Voice of America in Bulgarian for 1 hour, and then go back into another room and write down exactly what they said. Wow. In Bulgarian. And initially we said, there is no way in hell we can do that. Mm-hmm. But you can, you just, and it was a great experience for me. I mean, it really was, it turned out to be very positive in my life. So I'm going on too long. So in any event, we graduated from programs saying, what the hell are we going to do? And so one guy went to Spain, one guy went to Korea, as I remember, a guy went to Europe. I mean, we went everywhere in the damn world. Mm-hmm. And I checked into Nusur, French Morocco. I'd never been overseas before in my life. And the first sergeant said, so what is your specialty code? What do you do? And I said with great pride, sir, I am a Bulgarian linguist. And he said, "What in the will they send me next?"
Oh.
So I reported to supply, and I'm working, giving out oil and all this sort of stuff. And I was there like a couple of weeks. And then I went to Tripoli, Libya, and same thing in supply. And then I flew to another location, and I walked in the room. I'm enjoying telling this. Thank goodness Ann isn't here. She kicked me in the shins. But walked in the room, and we were all there.
Oh.
And a full bird colonel came in and said, "How many of you guys have read the Geneva Convention?" And of course, nobody had. So I've actually never read it, to be honest with you. But in any event, he read a specific clause that says this applies to the officer corps of the participating nations. And then he said, "None of you are officers. And from this point on, you will never report to an officer." Then he said, "I'm going to say a little bit more, and you're either in or you're out." So he said a little bit more, and Virgil, who was from Cape Girardeau, Missouri, stood up. And I remember he said, "Virgil, you get your backside out of here. Nobody talked to you about this. You didn't sign up for this." And he was gone. He was gone. But in any event, so this sort of sounds like more. It was a very interesting time in my life. In any event, so I came back to the United States. I know I don't say anything more. Okay, came back to the United States and took a tiny, not a big, little hold up your arm, and this sort of stuff. That I would not speak one word of Bulgarian for 10 years.
Wow.
I would not utter one word for 10 years. That I would never tell. Okay. Never, okay? And that I wouldn't leave the continental United States for 10 years. And so I was at Andrews Air Force Base, and Ann was kind enough to marry me, and we went there, and you always have sort of regrets in life. There's some things you would have done differently if you'd known what you knew. But she was Lutheran, I was Catholic, and at that time in Iowa, that was a big deal, which it isn't a big deal anymore, but it was at that time. And so we had all the problems associated. My mother was very religious. It was not an easy deal to do, and Ann probably put up with a bunch of stuff that I should not have. But anyway, that's the way life is. You're doing what you think is right, but if we look back, I just say, "Why in the world did I do that?" But anyway, in short order, I don't know, she got pregnant, and I was. It turned out if you have a clearance, well. I've been blessed with so many experiences, but at the time the space race. They were thinking that the Russians were laying off the coast of Florida in submarines and messing up with the electronics on the rockets. And so they needed somebody who had. I was still an enlisted guy, but they needed this sort of clearance. And so I had it. So I was involved with the communications with Cape Canaveral. So at any event, Ann gets pregnant, and I wake up in the bed, and there is blood coming out of her eyes. And she is obviously having spasms. And this is still some things never sort of lose their edge. In any event, I was extremely distressed and trying to hold her and trying to figure out what's going on, and am I awake and what's going on here, etc. And God works in strange and wondrous ways. We lived on the third floor of this apartment building, and in a dumb moment of my life, we were good friends with the people next door. And I thought, I'm going to need help holding her down and contacting and figuring out where we are. So I ran over, and the minute I knocked on their door, I realized I didn't have any keys, and the door slammed shut behind me. And Babes was what we call her, Babes and Charlie. I don't remember Babes' name. Anyway, she was in Puerto Rico. She opened the door. She knew exactly who to call, and that guy was there in 3 or 4 minutes. We got in, and Ann was laying there. And so we got in. I'll make this, could go on too long, but anyway, she went in the ambulance to Sibley Memorial Hospital, and I met a guy by the name of Fuad Cabney, and he was a physician, and he said, your wife has acute eclampsia, and he said the probability that this baby is dead is very high. So I walked down the hallway alone, and Ann and I had talked about the baby and so on. And I don't know whether I would do this again. You just have to be there at that time to see what you're going to do. So I came back down the hallway and said, they both got to have a chance. He said, okay, that changes the what we're going to do. I said, yeah, I take responsibility for that, but they both have to have a chance. And because he wanted to abort the baby. And so I went home, and when I got home, I was still in my pajamas. I started wearing pajamas when I married Ann. I don't wear pajamas. She's wonderful. She's just spectacular. But at any event, so they called and said an emergency situation has arisen. You come back to the hospital. So I went back to the hospital, and sort of cutting to the chase. Well, our children all have 3 names. I told them if the baby's alive, have a priest baptize it. A priest whom I never met before, never met again, came down and said I was in the way. The baby was barely alive while I was there. Nobody told me a name. So he said, I named it Francis Xavier. And he said, you can put whatever name you want in front of that. So his name is Michael Francis Xavier. And to sort of, the Fuad came to me and said, she really had a bad case of eclampsia. This is really bad. And he said, there's a goodly chance she's going to be blind. And so I talked to Ann's parents, and it was a grim time. But they then took me to Michael, whom I had not seen, because they thought he was dying. And so I saw him and came back, and then they took me to Ann. So, damn it, everybody survived and everybody's alive today. Let me just cut to the chase. So I was extremely fortunate, and we came to Iowa State University because we were from Iowa.
You left the military
in 1958.
58, okay.
4 years.
Mm-hmm. And the baby was?
Michael was a year and a half, something like that, a year. And and they said he's going to have all kinds of problems and all this sort of stuff. So, and he's turned out just wonderful. And when I moved a pot of flowers, Ann's eyes flickered, and I knew she wasn't blind. So I had a lot of good things that happened. And when I got to Iowa State, we were on the GI Bill, and I went to the counseling center and said, what's the highest starting salary for an undergraduate? And they said chemical engineering.
Was this because of your background that you wanted that financial security?
Yeah.
And family obligation?
That's right. We were scraping by. we were we were bouncing around on the bottom, and Ann's parents were wonderful people, but none of them had ever had the advantage of going to college, and they didn't really appreciate why the heck we were doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So in any event, so I said, well, I'm a chemical engineer, so that's why I'm enrolling in, and so this is going on, but. I took my first chemistry test and I got a 33. I'd never had chemistry before.
Oh, wow.
Never had a chemistry class.
Mm-hmm.
And Mr. Beach, whom I never will forget, said Greg was the textbook, and he was a professor from the University of Vermont. And Mr. Beach said, I'm going to put you in with the best student we have. Okay. Which was a blessing, and I decided that since I had developed this memory capability because of Bulgarian experience, I decided just to memorize the textbook.
Wow.
And so we were off, and then see, you're listening to all this, but you know, God has been so good to me; it's incredible. But so I was taking this math course, and the guy by the name of Roger Schmitz called me in and said, you know, you're just not going to make it. You're just wasting your time. You ought to just go back home. And so I had to drop out of that and take something called Math 5, no credit.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took Math 5. And then, I got a job as a custodian, okay? And then I well remember that next summer I was taking a 5-hour engineering calculus class in the summer. Boy, it comes at you like you can't believe.
Wow.
And this is a moment of sheer vanity, so excuse me for it. Two things happened. One, there was a sign, I remember it was about 5:15 in the morning. I was working as a janitor, and this guy had a sign on his desk. It said, "All things cometh to him who waiteth. If he worketh like hell, well, he waiteth." Isn't that good?
That is good.
That's good.
Yes.
And I also, as part of my assignment, I cleaned the president's office. And I was so amazed in that he had a private bathroom. His name was Hilton at the time, President Hilton. He had a private
Hilton,
bathroom.
Hilton.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like the Hilton Center that I was in. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a private bathroom, and he had he didn't use paper towels, he had cloth towels and a little receptacle to put them in that the janitor was supposed to clean. Anyway, because years later they sort of quietly approached me to whether or not I'd like to be president. I thought, isn't this
You had a flashback, didn't you?
unbelievable? So in any event, I caught up. Through the next summer, I caught up and got a job at the TV station. And so I was working 20 hours a week, and she was working 20 hours a week.
Now, did she finish her associate's degree before you married?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so then we were living in one of these tin things, you know, Pamela Court. Everybody's got those experiences. Okay, so we were doing that, and life got pretty good. We had a little money for a while. Ann was also typing envelopes for somebody who needed some envelopes to be addressed. They put something in and mail. Mm-hmm. And we could buy donuts. And, you know, life was sweet. So then I ended up going to work for Exxon.
So when did you finish your bachelor's degree?
58.
In 58.
Right.
Okay. And then
I went to work for Exxon.
Okay.
had a program. They put you through something called practice school. They didn't tell you before they hired you, but at the time you had to have a 3.5 or above in chemical engineering in order to be hired by Exxon. That was sort of the lower gate.
And what was your GPA?
I don't know.
You met that, the criteria.
They hired me. So I got, I mean, after junior and senior, I got A's almost all the time. So I don't know. So I can't resist. So Roger Schmitz was the faculty advisor for something called Pi Mu Epsilon at Iowa State. Okay, because I was in Tau Beta Pi and Phi Mu Epsilon and all this sort of stuff, you know. And Anne was impressed with the Greek letters. But in any event, they would induct people who weren't math majors, who had taken both ordinary and partial differential equations as an elective and gotten an A. That this is bragging. But it was such a wonderful moment when Roger Schmitz handed me that certificate. And I could see in his eyes, he was saying, "Holy schmazzoles." So anyway, so I went to work for Exxon, and they had something called a practice school. They always would hire, they said, about 10 to 15% more than they wanted because they knew they couldn't be accurate. And a good friend of mine, Bert Frinka, I guess, 3 weeks in practice school, something like that. They called him in and said, "You know, we don't think you're going to be a success with Exxon, and here's 3 months' salary. We're confident you're going to find something in life where you can be very successful, and we'll escort you to the gate."
Wow. And how did you spell his name?
Bert Frinka, I think it was Frnka, I think it is.
Bert.
Bert, B-U-R-T.
Okay.
Bert Frinka. In any event, I don't know where he went, but in any event, so when that was all over, a guy from Rice was number one, I was number two. Okay, he was smart in the whip. I mean, God, he was smart. But in any event, so they called me in, and at that time they gave a 12% for the top quartile to raise, 8% for the next quartile, 4% for the next quartile, and 0 for the next quartile. So they were in the process. They said, "We want to make a decision early in your career whether or not you're going to be a success. We don't want to waste your time. We don't want to waste our time," which I thought was good. Okay. And so I came out second in this. I don't know how many guys were in there, 25, something like that. And so anyway, so they called me in and said, "You know, they said, you know, we think you could rise to the level of vice president." That sounds pretty vain of me to say that, but they did. And so I went home to Anne, and I said, they said this would involve you would move to multiple locations and get experience doing various things, etc. Some overseas and so on. And so I went home to Anne, and I said, "Do you want to do that?" And she said, "No."
Were you thinking that you might want to do that? You weren't. Okay.
But I said, "I don't either." Well, I mean, people want to.
Yes.
It's just different structure for folks. It's not good or bad, just you're different. And so we come to Iowa State because I know where to get a job, and we have 2 children at the time, and you know, all this sort of business. And so we come back to Iowa State. Let's see, that'd be 63 or something like that.
Okay.
63, we come back to Iowa State. And make a little longer story short, by 67, I remember Anne said, if you complete your thesis by August, I will eat it. Okay? So the bottom line of it all is I did, and it was a delightful. At the time, there was something. Iowa State had an atomic energy facility there, as a result of the Second World War, and they had a faculty member who was very instrumental in how you separate uranium. Now they did it at Oak Ridge, but he knew the chemistry, etc. So he had a nice little lab there. And since I had a clearance, I did my research. You had to have a badge on and go through yards and so on. And in the atomic business, you end up with some residue that's really bad from a radioactive point of view. And so you need to minimize the size of it in order to shield it, because you have to put lead around it to make certain nobody got hurt. And then you got to figure out how many pipes you go in, and so you want to make it as small as possible. So I can go on too long, but the bottom line of it all was they were going to have a pulse reactor, which meant you just form a little bubble of this and then pull the bubble back, form it, pull it back, because you get the mass transfer across the surface of the bubble. But you didn't want the bubble to break, because then you have more of a separation process. But you want the bad guys to go across that interface when you push that bubble like this. And so they wanted a mathematical model of that droplet as it formed, because then if you knew the surface area, you could calculate the mass transfer coefficient. But in any event, you need to know the surface area and it's dynamic. So it turns out, I don't know, 1,400 or some damn thing like this.
So this was your research?
Yeah. A guy by the name of Laplace had figured out how, if it was static, how to describe mathematically, how to describe that. And boy, this is a moment of sheer vanity, but I've been enjoying it. I hope it's not too hard for you.
It's wonderful.
No. But in any event, my major professor said, "Do you think you could describe that mathematically?" I said, "Well, I had taken enough mathematics at the graduate level that a math professor approached me and said, 'I'll guarantee you a doctorate in mathematics if you'll stay one more year. You got all the coursework, you got everything. We can do this. You're done.'" Okay. And I had enough. But in any event, so I said, I got some ideas. So I remember I filled 3 blackboards with calculus symbols, and my major professor said, Larry Burkow was his name, had trouble with alcohol, but a wonderful man, very bright, said, "What are you going to do if it doesn't work?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to be something, but it's got to work." He said, "Why's it got to work?" I said, "Because the physics is right. I know the physics is right." So in any event, so I programmed this thing, and let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. I think that's right. It worked.
What do you mean you programmed?
Using Fortran and a computer.
Oh, in a computer, okay.
Okay. And then I got a high-speed camera, and at that time we were taking 500 frames a second, which is nothing now, but it was a big deal then. And I said, "This is what this Hummer's going to do," and it's what it did.
Wow.
So in any event, I think I had 4 publications, something like that. So my thesis was just referee journal publications were a big deal in chemical engineering, and I think it was. Anyway. So I had a referee journal, a pub in 2 of the best journals in chemical engineering. Just send them in, they accept them. Okay? Ann's hometown probably had 25 people at its zenith, and mine 100 or less. And so I got one of the faculty members knew some people at Caltech, and so they they invited me out to have lunch with the engineering faculty, chemical engineering faculty. And it was the damnedest experience you could imagine. I mean, for me, with our boys and how important family was for us and so on, because the traffic was unbelievable, the smog was unbelievable. And so I was there. I gave a little talk in the morning, then we had lunch, and they were going to talk in the afternoon. And I said, I would be rude if I didn't tell you that I think I just need to leave. I said, I'm flattered. I don't know. I'm not even going to, maybe you'd offer me a postdoc. I don't know what you're going to offer, but, we don't really have anything to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't take Ann and the boys there for all the tea in China. I mean, just because who we were.
Mm-hmm.
So then I flew from there, and I had opportunities to talk to people. But anyway, Virginia Tech was out in the country, and a land-grant school. I'm a land-grant kind of guy, and so I flew there, and they offered me a job, and so I'm about to accept it. And my major professor says, just a second. So I go into the faculty meeting of the chemical engineering group, and they say, don't do it. I said, what do you mean, don't do it? I said, I've turned 3 other places down. We're not coming. I don't want to be in the big damn city. Okay. In any event, they said, Jerry, the guy who was the department head, had been at Iowa State and then promoted to department head.
Mm-hmm.
They said, he's a real bad names, okay? And so they said, just don't go there. So I said, oh my God. So anyway, so we stayed at Iowa State for an additional year. They said, we got money for you, et cetera, et cetera. Okay?
Mm-hmm. Postdoc at this point.
Yeah. And so I fiddled around, as another paper or two, I think, something like that. And lo and behold, a guy came by from Lubbock, Texas. And I know a lot of people think it's the end of the world, but Ann and I went there, and we thought, God, this is just wonderful. I mean, our kids, they could ride their bikes. Mm-hmm. We had a little pool, a community pool. It was sort of Church of Christ community, and it was just, we loved it. We just absolutely loved it. And Ann went back to school and got her degree, and we were there from 68 to 77. And so
this was your your tenure track?
Yeah.
Your position?
Yeah, right.
So what was family life like when you were
just wonderful?
Mm-hmm.
Just wonderful. Well, let's see. The first 6 research proposals I wrote. Well, we went the first summer we were there. They gave us money. Second summer, I realized how little money they actually had. So we went out to Midland, Odessa, mm-hmm. and I had a summer appointment there, and ended up doing a little consulting for them and this kind of stuff. And then I said, this isn't going to be good if I got to move my family every 9 months. I mean, this is not good. And so I started chunking out research proposals. And the first 6 were bad. Nothing, no money.
Did you have support for those research proposals?
No.
Like people do more so now?
No.
Mm-hmm. So you're doing that, you're teaching?
9 hours.
Yeah, wow. Mm-hmm.
Well, but
I mean that's what you did.
Yeah. So so at night we were all. I was working. Ann was working. She was going to school. Our kids were working. We were having a great life. I mean, it was wonderful. Mm-hmm. So let's see. I guess the University of Arizona. Yeah, University of Arizona invited me out for a visit. Okay, and they were sort of looking for a department head. And I came back. This is a moment of sheer vanity. So get ready for another one of these guys. I came back to Lubbock, and we had some dear friends in Lubbock. We had a whole coterie of friends. We played bridge and we did all this stuff. We had an Airstream trailer, and we went camping in New Mexico. God, we loved it. I mean, it was just wonderful. It was just unbelievable. 31-foot Airstream trailer. We had more problems with that thing than you can imagine. It was constantly trying to fix that damn thing. Well, we had a good friend, he had one, and we'd go camping. And see, the boys, Ann had to have cesareans, and so they were all 4 or 5 years apart. Well, 3 sons, they thought their brothers were nerds. You know, just normal. And so, but we'd take them camping. We out in the woods. Who the hell are you going to throw the football with? I mean, you know. So we'd go to Cloudcroft and Ruidoso and Taos, and went skiing in Taos, and you know, it was just divine. But in any event, then I started. This is incredible. This is incredible. God works in strange and wondrous ways. Turned out they had enormous feedlots in that part of West Texas.
Yes.
Not, I mean, 80,000 heads at Randall County. And so the guy said to me, I don't know where it was, we were somewhere chatting, and he said, you know, we're spending a hell of a lot of money to get rid of that manure. And he said, if you got any ideas, we might, Texas Cattle Feeders Association, might be able to get you some money. So I said, oh my God, am I gonna? So, but the bottom line of it all was, and then we grew a lot of cotton in Lubbock, huge cotton, very important. And a guy said, there's, as with any major crop, you have some tails, so to speak, or some bad cotton, let me put it that way. It's got a lot of ends in it and stuff like that. And he said, we don't know what the hell to do with this stuff, okay? And so he said, Halligan, why don't you come up with some damn thing to do with this? And I said, well, you know, I got to have some money. He said, I think you give me a good idea, and I think we'll be able to get somewhere, okay? So the bottom line of it all was, I built a little fluidized bed reactor. I had started a little consulting company called Kandahar Consulting.
How do you spell that?
Like you do in Afghanistan.
Oh, okay.
But the reason we called it Kandahar, I call it Kandahar. We did. I had a couple other guys, but they never did anything. Was that in Taos at the end of the ski slope, there were the Kandahar condominiums. And I said, my objective is to buy one of those damn things. So I knew why I was busy consulting. So I had a little consulting business and going around acting like an expert in this and that. And so bottom line of it all was I wrote a proposal to the Environmental Protection Agency to build a fluidized bed and to process cow manure and turn it into, let me just say, in chemical engineering terms, a precursor of almost anything you want to make. Okay, so once you and if you look at it, it's just a feed that has been processed with steam and still has a lot of chemicals in it. So, but in any event, so I ended up with one this tall right here. And the Texas Cattle Feeders, so I got the first 6, nobody would give me a penny, and the next 6, everybody funded. So suddenly I had money out the wazoo, okay? So I ended up with the first reactor is about this tall, and the next one is 3 stories tall.
Wow.
Okay, at Texas Tech with a fluidized bed. And then in the cotton business, Brian said, come on, Ellie, come on. come up with some damn thing. Come on, we got all this crap. We need to do something. So in any event, Laplace's equation that I had expanded for the droplet turns out if you just sort of ride your bike in the morning or running in the morning, you say to yourself, okay, if I'm going to use this to clean up oil spills, okay, because you just sort of put down a mat, pick it up. How does one sort of mathematically model that? Okay. And I said, I said to myself, so the issue is the oil on the piece or is it between the pieces? So I said, well, get a little microscope and look in there, Hallie, and see what the hell's going on. Turns out that the vast majority of the oil is between, not on. They sort of bridge out. You get that bridge in there, and that's where the oil is. So I said, that's got to be Laplace's equation. So before I had to invert the Cartesian, I had to invert the coordinates, okay? Flip one of them upside down and integrate this way, and then flip the coordinates upside down and integrate this way. So the bottom line of it all was I came up with a little mathematical model to figure out how damn far apart those things should be. So what is the optimum spacing of this cotton, which is sort of in a bale and all this kind of crap, you know? So if you're going to spray it out of a helicopter onto an oil slick, okay, you can't just plunk out a bale. You got to open it up.
Excuse me just a minute.
Sure.
I'll hear something.
That's fine. So if you're going to, oh my God, it's 11 o'clock. But anyway, so if you're going to, well, this can go on and on. I've been so fortunate. It's incredible how fortunate I've been in life. But in any event, so after I got some money from Cotton Incorporated, like $80,000 or something like that. So I'm fiddling around. I've got half a dozen graduate students, and we're doing all this. Life is sweet. I'm running this little consulting company, and oh my God, we're in the chips. We got an Airstream trailer, we got a Buick. Oh my God, it's things are moving in the right direction. And so Cotton Incorporated says, look, we got money, but the Coast Guard really got money. Oh. So they said, get your backside up to Washington, D.C. and talk to somebody in the Coast Guard. So I go to Washington, D.C., and I can remember sitting, just a kid from Orlando, sitting out there on a bench, and there's this quadrangle with these huge buildings. And I can remember saying to myself, Halligan, he's in there somewhere. He is in there. There's a guy in there who funds this damn stuff. Your job is to find him. Mm-hmm. And so the bottom line of it is, I found him and talked to him about what sort of spacing you had to have and how you could actually sort of use mathematical logic to determine what you're trying to do if you're putting these mats out, etc. And another moment of sheer vanity here. So I was invited. I remember this guy was an admiral. God, I'd never met an admiral in my life. And I'd say there was about 8 of us in the room. This admiral came in. We're going to have this little briefing and so on. And he said, I remember he said, we have the 3 experts here in how to address the problem of oil spills. And I remember sitting there and looking around and saying, good God, Halligan, you are in big trouble. and they are in big trouble. So anyway, he sent us to the Florida Keys. They had a spill down there, and we sort of did some demonstrations of that sort of crap. And anyway, and so I had that going on the campus at Texas Tech, and then the National Science Foundation gave me a grant in a totally different area, but I had just sort of been fiddling around one time and thought. Remarkably simple when you think about it. If you drop, the question is, once again, back in my droplet and PhD thesis, it's that interface where the bad guys are transferred from one fluid to another. They go across that interface, you got them, okay? And so you got to have the right chemical gradient, blah, 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 that sort of stuff. But anyway, so I said to myself, how do you determine what the hell the thickness is? The actual thickness that makes a difference in that interface. And I could sort of remember the morning I was running. And I said, Halligan, you drop it with velocity through there. When it goes down, you have it come back up the other side. Okay? So you have a droplet come down, it bounces off you have a very gentle corner there. And then when it rises back up, it comes up over here, not where it came down. Therefore, you can count the number of drops that came down. You can figure out their diameter. You know how, there you go. So
you make it sound easy.
No. So a guy who was at the University of Colorado in chemical engineering was with the National Science Foundation. When I go to Washington, D.C. I would go there to see people about the cattle manure project and about the Coast Guard project. So I go by and see the people at the National Science Foundation because I knew a couple of them. And so this guy said, that's a hell of a deal, Halligan. So anyway, so I got some money for that. So I had more money than any other faculty member at Texas Tech. And I had won, they gave away 3 distinguished teaching awards each year. Mm-hmm. God, you're just getting a hayride load. But in any event, I won one of those. And so you got to have a discussion with the president when you won one. Mm-hmm. And I remember he was there, and Orlo Childs, his principal for research, was there. And I said, Halligan, I'm not going to waste this. It's not to go ahead and say it's just wonderful around here. I went in there and said, look, guys, this is what the problem is. This is why we're not doing as well as we could do. These are the changes that need to be made. Oh. Mm-hmm. I mean, why waste it? I mean, and if they're there and they're good people, they want somebody who's down there in the trenches to tell them what the score is. Mm-hmm. Because it was so tough to get things through the purchasing department. I always gave 10% of all my consulting fees. I can say this now. Into a bank account downtown. And so if one of my researchers or one of my faculty colleagues has a part broke and he's got to have it, okay, he just went to the bank and bought it. Mm-hmm. Because by the time you got through this whole damn bureaucracy, you were a week to 10 days out. I mean, when I'm doing things in the lab and something breaks, I got to go fix it. So I just put some money in the account. I was wondering, but in any event, that's the way it was. And so bottom line of it all was I got to know the president. Grover Murray was his name. I guess he remembered me. Mm-hmm. Grover Murray. But in any event, M-U-R-R-A-Y, I think it was. I remember his wife cried when he resigned as president. I went when he resigned. Well, name it. So let me finish it. So the University of Arizona invited me over. Okay, I blew a little smoke, and etc. And so when I came back to the airport in Lubbock, lo and behold, Grover Murray was there. I'm sure he was there for some other purpose, but he saw me, and I remember this moment, sheer vanity. He said, "Young man, we are not going to let you leave Texas Tech." And I said, "Well," he said, "what are they talking to you about?" And they said, "They were talking to me about being department head at Chemical Engineering, University of Arizona." And so the guy who was department head in chemical engineering, they promoted him to be dean of research, which I don't know what the hell a dean of research is, to be honest with you. But anyway, they made him dean of research, and they made me department head.
Huh?
So that was pretty good, and so we were sort of doing all these things, and Ann got a degree, and she's teaching, and we have friends, and everything's just wonderful. And God, we're going to be here forever. We love this. We know some people think this is the anal canal of the world, but we don't think it is. We think it's wonderful. It's our kind of place, our kind of people. Blah blah blah. And Bill Hobby was the lieutenant governor of the state of Texas. Hobby Airport, this sort of stuff. Titanic figure, oh my God. Unbelievable. Anyway, the lieutenant governor in Texas is very powerful. Not like here. It's a very powerful position. Sort of control the agenda in the Senate. So you can determine whether or not a bill is going to be heard, when it's going to be heard. So you can get a good grip on them in a strategic place. So in any event, he invited me down. He had an office in Houston. He was a big, rich guy, oil, all this kind of crap. Anyway, so he invited me down to Houston because they were going to have this special initiative in terms of research. And we didn't like Houston when I was with Exxon. I know, my son lives there. There's 6 million people in Houston, okay? So it's 6 million to 1. I mean, there's got to be, you can tell who's wrong here. But in any event, so I was flattered with it. We had a nice chat. He's a very nice guy. And, I said, we'd like to think it through and have a chance to consider everything and so on. And so a guy at Texas Tech.
So this was a government position?
It was the state of Texas. State of Texas is going to put a bunch of money in the pot. And we're going to move out in terms of areas of research.
Oh, okay.
Sort of centers of excellence kind of stuff. God, I just didn't want to be in Houston or Austin. But anyway, so in any event, so I came back, and a guy who was dean of the graduate school was going to be leading part of that effort on the Tech campus. And he had a meeting where he sort of delineated what he thought our strengths were and what we were going to do. And I raised my hand and said, what if you don't like it? What you say? What are we going to do? And excuse my French, but it was interesting. He said, well, those who get pissed are going to get pecked. Oh. And I stood up and said, I'm pissed, so start pecking. And I went home to Ann and said, I think we're done here. I think we're done here. So we hit the campaign trail, and Georgia Tech, they have schools. Their programs are pretty big in engineering. They had a school of chemical and metallurgical and blah, 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 engineering, something like that. Not a dean, but sort of in between a department and a dean. And so they offered me a job. I mean, we went through all this kind of crap, although they offered me a job. And man, I've often wondered what it would have been like had I taken that job. It was probably the third or fourth best job in chemical engineering in the United States. Just a wonderful program, lots of money, very good support, a lot of reputation and so on. And but I had an MGB convertible, one of those little MGB, and I figured I'd had to drive at least 1 hour each way if my sons were going to have anything that I consider to be a decent life. And so Rolla, Missouri was Missouri School of Mines. Used to be the largest engineering program in the United States. Don't know, it isn't anymore. Texas A&M, I think it is. But in any event, pretty good school. They offered me the job of dean. And I forget, we had some other things that we were fiddling around with. But in any event, cutting to the chase, we decided to paperweed there that we were going to go to Rolla, Missouri. So I went there as dean of engineering and cried all the way to Dallas from Lubbock. It was just really tough, really tough. But in any event, we going to Rolla, I think we would say now, was just one of the great things that happened to us in life. Our children had been growing up. We had grown up Ann got running water. I think she got it in 8th grade, and I think I got it in 7th or 8th grade in our house. Before that, we had outside toilets, and our granddaughters. Oh my God, we've taken them on international tours and so on. They see one of those toes, oh my God, I can't possibly do that. so the bottom line of it all. But anyway, let's see. So back to, so we go to Rolla. I don't know, I'm just rattling.
No, we're good. I just checked to make sure you're still in the frame well.
All right. So
yes.
anyway, so we go to Rolla, and Ann meets a lovely lady. She had been teaching school in Lubbock, and she meets a lovely lady. She didn't really want to teach. It was a smaller town, which we loved, but the dean can influence hiring a lot of people, so he didn't want any shadow to be on. She's getting real estate because so she went to work for a real estate company, and we were trying to separate that, making certain that there's no conflict of interest there. And we were there 2 years, I guess. 77, 70, that's right, 2 years.
77.
77 to 79. 77 to 79 in Rolla, Missouri. And it was a terrible job. They just had everything. There were no challenges. It was just, you named the device and they had it, and they had these, it was just, God, I could just sit there and sign these little things, and so I got a little research program going, got $750,000 in research for, I'm going to use sawdust rather than cattle feedlot manure to make this thing called producer gas, and then you can, whatever you want to make, you can make with it. And so Virgil Flanagan and I got the grant. He was doing, but I was sort of whispering in his ear every now and then. And so I was in one of those times I've been so fortunate in life. The dean of the University of Missouri was a guy by the name of Jim Olson, nice man, and he was in a hell of a fix. Co-op Extension was in big trouble, and it reported directly to him rather than the dean, and it was just a lot of problems associated with it. Didn't know that at the time. So if you don't know what to do with a problem, you appoint a committee, because that gives you some time to figure out what the hell you actually want to do. And then you whisper that to the chair of the committee, and there you go, you know. That's management 101. I mean, come on. But I didn't quite know that at the time. But in any event, so he appointed the president of the University of Arkansas, the chancellor, I think it was University of California, one of those, I think Irvine or one of those, campuses. A big mogul from Ralston Purina. They were big in Missouri. There was a lady on there, I can't remember her. But anyway, I was appointed. I'm sitting there saying, what the hell are you doing in this room? How are they going to say hell of a deal? But in any event, I quickly figured out that we weren't supposed to come up with any resolution. We were supposed to let time pass when we figure out what the hell we're going to do here, And the heat was sort of draining away from it. All problems, the heat drains away over a period of time. So I think we were on that. So in any event, I was out in the parking lot of the Hilton Hotel in Columbia, Missouri. And the president of the University of Arkansas and I, for some reason, were seated alongside of each other in these meetings. And so he'd lean over every now and then and say something. I'd lean over and say something. Boring meeting, 3 hours, listening to what the hell they're doing in co-op extension, and that sort of stuff. And so we're in the parking lot, and he said, Jim, he said, my College of Engineering, University of Arkansas, is in big trouble. They had an accreditation visit, and I have to inform all students who enroll as freshmen that there's a high probability we will not be accredited when they graduate, and therefore they can't get their engineering certification. And he said, I'd like to have you come down and be dean. So I went home to Ann, what a lovely person. And I said, that sounds like a hell of a deal. I said, anybody want to get on the Titanic after they've hit the thing and say, let me take care of this, okay? so in any event, we had been through Fayetteville a couple of times when I was with Exxon. So we'd driven through there, so we had an idea. And so to make a long story short, he said, you go ahead and interview. We have to go through all this dance of looking at candidates and so on. But he said, have no fear. You're going to come out all right in this, okay? So we did it. I became Dean of Engineering at the University of Arkansas. And it was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. The program was absolutely in shambles. It was just wonderful. And
you liked that challenge.
I really do, yeah. And so in any event, we needed a new building. We needed to reorganize the departments. It was just spectacular. And so bottom line of it all was the governor was a guy by the name of Bill Clinton. And so I immediately, we had a little TV campaign for a new building, and I developed some statistics about how much underserved the people of Arkansas were with respect to the number of engineers they were producing, and I started the Arkansas Academy of Engineering. We put the Razorback up on tracks like he was a caterpillar, and put a hard hat on him, and we did all kinds of things. So the bottom line of it all is we were having a hell of a good time. And there was a old textile facility south of the campus, about 2.5 miles, I guess, south of the campus. They came on the market, and I said I raised $1 million, I remember, one year, and I would give a grant to the department head. And I said, if your faculty are bitching and moaning, it's your fault, all right? You're getting this money to make them happy. If they're not happy, maybe we need to get somebody else to make them happy, okay? So I was relatively clear as to what we were about, and things were sort of moving in our direction. I got Ernest Galoina, who was the dean at the University of Texas. We were good friends. The University of Texas had approached me about being on their faculty, okay? God, Austin, oh my God. But in any event, So I knew him, okay. And then Vince Hahnemann was the head of the American Society for Engineering Education. So I got a little money and brought them in as experts to tell us what we needed. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Who can argue? Head of the American Society of Engineering Education telling us what we need. Okay? I remember they said we're going to wet in the corner of these buildings, Halligan, when we're building. so the bottom line of it all was I thought I was coming along nicely. I had started up this group, special group, and I hired the guy from Reynolds Aluminum. I made him a part of the critical advisors to the dean. Okay, blowing smoke the best I could, and because he was the employer of a guy who controlled a lot of the funding in the House of Representatives in Arkansas.
Ah.
So. Your mama didn't raise no fool. I mean, come on. So, and I had other guys from Murphy Hall, and all of them, a bunch of moguls, and of course, it's either give or get off. I mean, it wasn't there because I love the way you brush your teeth. I mean, we gotta, and you gotta help me get this damn thing through the legislature. Okay, and so I had it funded. And I would say there was about 12 minutes left in the session. And Lacey Landers, the employee of Reynolds Aluminum, took my money away and spent it for an old folks home in his district. And that was a great learning experience for Halligan. I didn't appreciate it at the time. But it was a great learning experience. And so Bill Clinton had been governor, and I got to know him a little bit. And then he got defeated by a guy by the name of Frank White. He had 2-year terms in Arkansas at that time for governor. Now it's 4 years. And so I walk out of my building, which was a decrepit thing, lovely. And lo and behold, standing in the hallway is Bill Clinton, the defeated governor. I said, Governor Clinton, what the hell are you doing here? He said, I wanted to see this pile of crap, and just so I'd be able to know what you're really talking about, Halligan. And that was sort of a seminal moment for us. I'd say we spent an hour, okay, together. I remember trying to think of how to say this, because I said it very directly. I said, you were an arrogant anal canal, but I said it in stronger terms than that. I said, if there's ever a politician I've met who should be defeated, you were the one. Arrogance is not adequate to describe who you and Steve Smith, I think it was, your first lieutenant. That is not adequate to describe you guys. He said, gosh dang, Halligan, you're being so subtle, I don't think I can understand you. And I said, let me also say now, you're the most talented politician I have ever met in my life. You are something to behold. You're smarter than hell, and the women just love you. Okay? And I remember we were walking by. I was recently invited to the University of Arkansas to give a couple of talks. Okay? We were walking by the Old Main there on their campus. And I said, you got everything you need to be president of the United States except humility. I said, your defeat was just wonderful. Just wonderful. So he ran again, and we got the money for the building. Let's see, I was dean, and we were drawing the plans and et cetera, and working on all this. And all the deans except one arranged for an appointment in my office, which was surprising. This is a moment of vanity again. And they said, we think that the chancellor is going to hire this guy to be number 2, vice chancellor for academic affairs, number 2. And he's no good. They use other language, but he's not good, not acceptable to us. Going to make all of our lives miserable. So Halligan, we're all going to unite behind your candidacy. And we think the board will knuckle. So Ann was selling real estate for Jim Lindsay. I don't know if you've heard of him or not.
No.
He owns a zillionaire, okay? The facility north of town that has the golf course with it and so on.
Mm-hmm.
That's a Lindsay property.
Mm-hmm.
Really a very interesting man. We all have faults. I certainly have mine. He certainly was not exempted from that, but a brilliant individual. But in any event, lo and behold, the chancellor walks over to my office and says, "I'd like to have you be vice chancellor of academic affairs." And Ann says, "For God's sakes, it's going to make it even tougher for me to sell real estate."
Mm-hmm.
But in any event, being a wonderful person that she is, I became number 2 in
Mm-hmm.
Fayetteville.
Did you see this coming at all, or was this a total shock to you when they came and talked to you
When the
about
dean
that?
came, totally
Yes.
shocked me. I was so busy. We started that research park south of the campus. Now, if you go there, it's a huge research park. It's unbelievable. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, and I kept saying, okay, I'll raise the money. Okay, I don't want a part of the physical plan. I don't want to be tied up with the darn physical plan. Okay, I'm really editing my words here. And be proud of me. I don't want to be part of the darn physical plan. We'll run it ourselves. Okay, we'll run the whole damn thing ourselves. Just leave us alone out there. We're going to make money out the wazoozy. Okay, we're going to get this research. We got these researchers. It's going to happen, baby. Just leave us alone out there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's happened. Okay, it's amazing what happened. But in any event, whenever you succeed, you always emphasize not your failures. So in any event, so I became vice chancellor for academic affairs, and because I thought they might hire the other guy. He was bad. Almost in very short order, I'd say after 6 months or so, we used to entertain socially. Ann's very adroit socially. She's wonderful. I mean, she talk about social gifts, Ann has got them in spades. Okay, and so the bottom line of it all was we had these people at our house, and we had a bar and so on. And the guy who was the chief fiscal officer said the chancellor's having an affair with a lady in his office. I said, "Fred, you gotta be kidding me. You gotta be kidding me." Well, so I went into his office, just the two of us, and I said, "Look, this is what people are saying. You and I have to be honest with each other, okay?" And he'd been honest with me. He told me almost immediately. He said, "I have a degree in music." He said, "I don't really understand mathematics, never have, really don't like it." He said, "I'm hiring you. I want you to do the budget. You do the budget, okay? Now, you come in and we'll chat when you're done with it, you bring it in. But, you're going to be you manage the arithmetic." He said, "I play the piano." And he said, "I can charm the pants off of old ladies." He said, "We're going to raise some money, and you're going to do the budget." Okay, I said, "Okay, that's the deal. That's the deal. I'm good with the arithmetic." And so the bottom line of it all is, I said to him, "I got to know. Okay? I got to know." Okay, because we're very old-fashioned. We just are. I mean, in terms of lifestyles and things like that. Catholic, for God's sakes. I don't know. So anyway, he said, "No, I'm not." I said, "You're saying no?" He said, "Yep, I'm saying no." Well, he was lying.
Ah.
It was obvious he was lying. So this is the most interesting day Ann and I think we have ever lived coming up. So the Board of Trustees at the University of Arkansas, they see, how am I going to say this? I have never been at any university, Missouri, Arkansas, New Mexico, and Oklahoma State, where members of the board are appointed surely on merit. So it took me a while to adjust to that reality of life. But that certainly was true as I was learning in Arkansas. Okay. And of course, there's a lot of people who would like to be on the board. It's a great position. I have a story which I won't tell here, but of how much money changed hands. Now, whose hands they ended up in, who knows? But you know, so the bottom line of all was, we're having a board meeting, the big one about the budget for the entire university system. Halligan's going to do the chancellor won't do Fayetteville. Halligan's going to do the budget for Fayetteville, and the president was a guy by the name of Jim Martin. Interesting individual, how life has brought me around people like this. He was a pretty good man, but he couldn't stand the pressure. And so by 8 o'clock at night, he would shut his phone off and he'd be totally inebriated. And he was becoming more and more, you could tell things weren't good. And so we're all in Little Rock, and I'm about to give the presentation, and we're waiting. The board's late, and Martin, the president, met them at the airport. They come in on planes, and so the word swept through the room. They have fired Jim Martin at the airport.
Wow.
But we're all going to be nicey nice, you know. But he knows it's over. Mm-hmm. So the question is, how are we going to skate through to have this take place? Mm-hmm. So I am starting to give, the chairman of the board of trustees is here. I'm standing here. President Martin is here. Chancellor Nugent is there. I'm giving the presentation about the Fayetteville budget. And I said to myself, Jim Martin is having a heart attack. He's sweating, he's grabbing this arm. Now, after a little while, I was not listening to what I was saying, nor was anyone else in the room listening to what the hell I was saying about the budget, because they were looking at this guy. Well, Harry Ward, who was a good friend of mine, and he ran the medical school at the University of Arkansas, he came up and said, I can't say exactly what he said, but don't want to say it here, but he said, get your posterior out of that chair, Martin. We're not waiting for any GD ambulance. Your backside is going to be in my car, and we're headed for the emergency room. Okay? Mm-hmm. So they stumble out. Mm-hmm. Okay? Mm-hmm. And the trustees at the University of Arkansas always would stop and have coffee midway through the thing, so they go to the bathroom and have a little crumpet, but that's when the real meat was cut. The press wasn't there for coffee. Okay, so that's when the bacon was sliced thick or thin. Okay, And so they called me in and they said, Martin has had a damn heart attack. We can't fire him now, for God's sakes. We're going to have to give him some time, okay, for him to recover so he can get a job, okay? So we are going to fire Nugent, the chancellor.
Oh my goodness.
You can hardly believe this.
What a turn of events.
And so, a guy who was now was on the Supreme Court of Arkansas said to me, Jim, go tell Nugent he's done. I said, I can't do that. I said, he's my boss, for God's sakes. I said, you guys are the bosses, for God's sakes. I was very clear with my language. My drill instructor basically would have been proud of me. I said, you got to do it. You got to do it. Well, the two of us went together. He said, Jim, you got to come with me. I can't do it, Jim. You got to come. So we went, and everybody saw the two of us going to this meeting. So then I'm trying to push people away, get him enough space that there can be some feeling of privacy, not a lot, but some at least. And he says to Nugent, look, we know what you've been doing. You're done, okay? Now, so this means you go get a job. We don't want to have any public embarrassment or anything like this, but you are done, all right? This, you know, your job now is to get a job, okay? So Ann and I had arranged, I enjoy this story, but I had arranged with a guy by the name of Ray Adam. He was a mogul in New York City. He graduated from the University of Arkansas, chemical engineering. So I'd really shined his shoes. And he was going to give us $1 million for a chair. Okay. And but he wanted us to come to the World Trade Center, top of the World Trade Center. And we had a chair, folding chair, and it had the Adam chair and chemical engineering here. Okay. Mm-hmm. I pre-sent it. It's going to be there. Put your posterior down in here, Ray. It's going to fit good, baby. You know, that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. And so we had arranged for us to catch the plane to be able to go to this event. Well, it turns out we missed the plane at the airport because of all this stuff that's going on. So they get the university plane, and these are days of yore. So we are on the university plane chasing the plane. So the bottom line of it all is some people knew, some people didn't. They stopped the plane, I think in Cincinnati or Louisville or some damn place like this, okay? And we get off our plane. They put down the ramp in those days, you know. We get back on their plane. We go to New York City. And we're having this big gala at the top of the World Trade Center and all this sort of stuff. And it was a wonderful event for him, et cetera, et cetera. And I remember I turned to Ann and I said, we will never live another day like this in our lives, I don't think. So, I don't know if you want to go on or is this enough? Or
is it enough? Let's continue. So
okay.
It's about 11:40. I don't have anything else planned today. So let's continue a little bit longer.
Sure.
And we'll take a break.
Okay.
Maybe have lunch or whatever. Right. And then if we want to continue this afternoon or meet next week or whatever.
I just should knock it out.
We can. Okay. Okay.
That's the way I am.
Let's keep going a little bit longer. And then
So in any event, am I giving too much detail? Should I make it a little short?
This is fascinating.
Okay.
This is
so in any event, if you're not a candidate for chancellor, you don't have any power if you're vice chancellor of academic affairs, because they know you're not going to. And if that person becomes chancellor, probably going to. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I mean, you have to tender your resignation. That's just assumed. So I was candidate. I remember Ann and I woke up in the middle of the night, almost the two of us simultaneously. And I said, this is a mess. I said, the people on this board, now we were newbies. We hadn't been around in the world and banged into things, so to speak, a little bit, which we have later on in life. But I said, I have to withdraw. She says, you're right, that's what we have to do. We have to go somewhere else.
Mhm.
So I withdrew, and they hired a guy by the name of Ron Carrier, like Carrier of air conditioning. He was the president of George Mason University as chancellor. He called me, and first thing he said was, "Why in the hell didn't they hire you as chancellor?" Because he came and interviewed. So. And I was doing both jobs. And so I said, "Well, I withdrew." He said, "That's BS, Elliot." I said, "You're not answering the question." I said, "Well, it just isn't a fit for us. Not a fit for us." So he said, "Well, talk to me about the budget." So I talked about the budget. He said, "They didn't tell me that." He said, "I don't think I'm going to come." I said, "You can't say you're not going to come. People are going to say, what the hell I can talk to you out of this job? Excuse me, I mean, you can't tell me that." So in any event, to make this short, it was another very interesting day. He came. He called me up the night before, and he said, "Where is Martin?" I said, "Well, he drinks a little, and he shuts his phone down at 3 o'clock.
He didn't know that.
And at 8 o'clock. And he said, "He's in Auburn." I said, "He could be. He doesn't check with me on his schedule." Okay. He said, "The blank, blank, blank is in Auburn. He's in Fayetteville in a hotel in Columbia." I said, "Well, so he comes in the next morning, and we have the executive council, where all the vice presidents and the hooties sit around the table. And I had been, since I was doing both jobs, I was sitting at the head of the table. And I said to him, "Okay, I'll go in there, I'll introduce you. We'll each go around, just sort of say very briefly, this is what we do. Hello, we love you." Okay. And he said, "I'm not going to sit there." I said, "What do you mean you're not going to sit there?" He said, "I want to sit over here." He had a guy with him. Never like it when they bring somebody with him. Not a good sign. But anyway, he said, "I want to sit over here." I said, "Well, you're calling the shots, but I mean, it's going to be a little different than normally sit there." He said, "I want to sit there." It's okay. So, and anyway, we started at 8:30, and I would say about 9:45. He said, "I'd like to have a little break." I said, "Fine, good." So we went in my office, and he said, "I need to make a telephone call." I said, "Okay." So I told Betty, wonderful lady that I work with, he needs to make a call. So he makes a call, calls this guy on the phone, and he said to this guy, "I don't know who the new president George Mason's going to be." And he says, "I am." He said, "I'm coming back. Shut down the search." I said to him, "Just a minute. Hold it. I said, in the next 24 hours, we can do more good for the University of Arkansas than somebody could in 5 years. We got them by a strategic place." Okay? Martin's going to go. They don't want both of these positions open. Okay? I know what to ask for. I know exactly what to ask for. And we're going to get Bill Clinton, and we're going to squeeze him. And he said, "I hear you guys have a place here that has really good ribs." I said, "Yeah, it's Coy's." He said, "I want to go to Coy's for ribs on my way to the airport." Oh my God. So we had Chancellor for a day. One day.
Oh gosh.
So, anyway, so we're back in the suit. And it's a wonderful person, but it's one of those times she said, I don't know where we're going, but we are out of here. That I know. We're out of here. So there are headhunters for academic position, for sort of dean and above. There are headhunters for a president in those days. Used to get $50,000 plus expenses. Okay, and so there was hydrogen struggles, and there was a guy. He would call me when I was. He started calling me in Missouri, but he would call me, I don't know, every 4 or 5 months, 6 months, something like that. Said, Jim, you know, you're looking for a job, okay? You know, don't forget me, okay?
So he reached out to you.
Oh yeah.
That's how they work.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, this is what I got right now. And of course, from his point of view, he's got to get 5 candidates.
Mm-hmm.
He gets 5 candidates to the campus. It's your job to convince them to take the job. It's not his job.
Mm-hmm.
He says, cut me that check for $50,000. So you got to realize what he's doing. I mean, he's just taking care of mom and the grandkids. I mean, you know, this. He doesn't love you. That's just the way it is. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
it's the way the world works. So in any event, so I called him up and said, Bill, well, let's see. No, I actually went to Dallas. He said, Jim, come down here. We need to have a chat. And but in any event, let's see. So we always liked New Orleans. It's a big city, but we always, and took French in college. She loves France. We've been to Paris here recently. Probably been there 4 or 5 times. You know, she just loves it. And so the University of New Orleans, I had a research, that's too much detail, but I had a research deal going on in Arkansas, and just sort of on the side. And so I knew a guy who was with the Gulf South Research Center. He was in New Orleans, and Elias Klein was his name. And I had gone there. He had some sort of problem. I forget the name. And we sort of talked to each other. And how the hell would you do this? And so we've been in New Orleans a couple times, and we liked the whole French Quarter and all that. And we said, you know, when our kids are grown, maybe sometime we want to just live in the French Quarter and just see what that would be like. So the University of New Orleans was looking for a president.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, well, let's go down and just talk to those people. And the people from New Mexico State, we had loved. We used to go camping in New Mexico all the time. Like one year we camped 60 nights.
Wow.
Oh, we were big.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we had 3 sons, and we had to make certain they knew each other and loved each other. And all that
Family
stuff.
time.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Otherwise, it was pools, and they wouldn't have anything to do with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So in any event, so we go to Cloudcroft and Ruidoso, Taos, and Santa Fe, and all this sort of stuff. And we loved it. And so the people from New Mexico State flew up to Fayetteville. I don't know how the hell that actually happened, but in any event, they flew up there at the Hilton. And I remember we had gotten there early, and we were walking down the steps, and these people were walking up the steps. And Ann said, that's them. She's so good. She's so good. Well, it was them, 5 people on the board, and a couple of hats, boots, and oh God, I love that sort of stuff. And so the bottom line of it all was, they said, well, come out here and talk to us, okay? So we said, okay, we'll do it. So we went to New Orleans, and in a moment of vanity, I remember we heard them say, we got to stop the search and offer him the job today. He will not be on the market a week from today. Hmm. And in any event, so then we flew to Las Cruces, and God, it was wonderful. It was just, we're sort of classic. When we left Exxon, we're sort of classic do-gooders. We are down deep inside do-gooders. And Doña Ana County at the time was one of the poorest counties in the United States. 70%, something like that, 75% Hispanic. Um, they hardly had a pot or a window to throw it out of. It was just made in heaven to try to have some sort of impact. And so we flew out there, and then when we flew back, Patrick said that he had a call, okay? And so we called back, and they said, we want you to be president. And so I said, well, I'll call you back in 5 minutes, talk to Ann, okay? She said, yeah, I think that'd be good.
So this was New Mexico State?
New Mexico State. And it's such a tragedy what's happened. When we went there, I don't know, maybe 100,000 people in total. Now there's 250,000 people in Delgado County. It's amazing. It's just, it was voted the number one mid-sized community in the United States to retire in or something like that. It just exploded. It was just terrible. Well, I mean, you know, a lot of people love it. It's got a nice climate and all that sort of stuff. So in any event, so we went to New Mexico State as president. I had great times there. I had said when I went there, I said, I have 3 conditions. Okay. Number 1, nose is in, fingers out. If you want to run this damn place, you got the wrong guy. You want to get your nose in and smell whether or not things are good or something bad's going on, have at it. Anytime you can call up the chief fiscal officer, you can call up anybody. Say, I'd just like to know about this. That's fine with me. Nose is in, fingers out. Okay? And I have the job here. I told nose is in, fingers out. Okay? And then the second thing I said was, I won't do it longer than 10 years. If you can't get it done in 10 years, I don't know whether you can get it done. Okay? And life is short, so I don't want to do it for 10 years. And then the third thing is the vote's either unanimous publicly, or I'll say I won't take it. May not be unanimous privately, but publicly we're all going to be united when we launch this ship. So I said, no problem. Okay. Well, I was there not too long, but the previous guy, the financial exigency is the operation you go through when the university is going to have a financial crisis. Unbeknownst to me, they had had that exercise the year before I arrived. And so it was. There's always things they don't tell you about a job. So, but in any event, so God was generous to us. We turned things around. Enrollment increased. We were the fastest growing university in the state. Blah 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 blah. Okay, was wonderful. Had one thing they had not mentioned. The president before me was an interesting individual. I'm sure he says I'm an interesting individual. He had, for some strange reason, had Holloman Air Force Base in White Sands is right next to Las Cruces, right over the mountains. He had, when they were going to put astronauts to the moon and places like this, they used to put monkeys and chimpanzees on rocket sleds to see how big of a deceleration and acceleration they could stand without dying. So they had a bunch of chimpanzees and monkeys out there. And in a moment that I would never be able to comprehend, he allowed them to give them to the university. So the first meeting I had with the board, I said, we had breakfast with the president. I said, you know, I just found this out. I said, this is absolutely incredible. What the happened here? Who possibly agreed to this deal? We don't have any money to support these things. It's costing us $750,000 a year. And I remember one board member said, I knew it. He popped at the table. I knew it. Why did we do that? Why did we do that? But in any event, so in one of those it was and it's like everything else in life, it's a real challenge for you. When you're on the other side of it, it's sort of a delightful experience. I mean, you had to sort of ask yourself to do things and so on. And one of the things that students always love me to tell, so I have to tell you, and I'll try to make it short. We had 300 rhesus and macaque monkeys. And Jane Goodall is you know Jane Goodall,
Yes.
okay? And I think she's right, okay? But anyway, I didn't have any money. I mean, I'm trying to minimize my expenses here. So being an Iowa kid, we got some corn cribs, round wire things, 3 stories tall, big corn cribs. And put connections between them so the monkeys could go back and forth and swing around and have a good monkey life. And so one day, whenever this guy came in to see me, we always build a gym. Whenever he said, Mr. President, he knew it was exciting. Okay, it was exciting. And he said, in the desert, they have these dust devils that come along, these spinning things like that. And he said, an unbelievable size dust devil has come through Holloman Air Force Base. And we have 300 monkeys loose on Holloman Air Force Base. And this was about, I'd say, 3:30 in the afternoon. Well, let's see, the commander of Holloman Air Force Base is not the person you want to talk to. It's the wing commander who's the guy who really is the guy, okay? And he had wanted me to fix, I'm going to get there. He had wanted me to fix the golf course, and so I had said I want a real ride. So he gave me a real ride. I mean, a ride in one of those. But anyway.
One of those jets?
Yeah, 4 of them. We went out in a bombing range. It was wonderful. It was absolutely wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. I get to go on without that. But anyway, it was just a spectacular experience. So I knew him a little bit because we knew each other. And so this is about 3:30 in the afternoon. And I said, oh my God. Okay, so we got our team together. And I remember saying, if you go home and tell your wife and I find out, I give you my solemn word of honor, I will fire you. You are done. We are going to formulate a plan, and I don't want any blabbermouths. We got a hell of a problem here. And I don't need the press and everybody filming us while we're trying to come to grips with this. So I'm going to go on. Ann isn't going to know what's going on. I'm going to go on as if life is just the way it is. We're going to formulate a plan. So the bottom line of it all is we got 3 panel trucks. We went to El Paso, not to Las Cruces, which is 40 miles away. And we bought bananas like you cannot believe. Monkeys love bananas. They go ape over bananas. They really do. And we got some nets, okay? And so the guy that head of the physical plant, Texas A&M graduate, member of the Corps, wonderful guy. Oh my God, you got him, right? You got him. So Ben Woods, and I said, okay, Ben, the physical plant, the Hispanics in the physical plant, wonderful people. Oh my gosh, wonderful people, just spectacular. So you marshal all your people, okay? You have them out there, dawn's early light, be in position, okay? And then you call me when you can see anything at all to try to describe the situation that's confronting us. I said, I will have called the wing commander at 8 o'clock at night, and I'm going to tell him it's a problem, but I got it under control, okay? Because he's got these super secret jets and all that. It's a big mess. Oh my God. Wait a minute. So I remember Ben called me. He's always, the Corps, Mr. President. Mr. President, he said, it's obvious that a pack of coyotes came through here during the night. And he said, when you look at any telephone pole, you look at any mesquite bush, you look at any ridge line, it is covered with monkeys. He said, there are monkeys every damn where you can imagine. But he said they all seem to have come together under this threat. Okay, so they seem to have clustered. So I said, well, roll out those damn bananas. Here we go. And the bottom line of it all was the Hispanic guys they're just wonderful people. They are just wonderful people. Hard workers. But name it. When the smoke all cleared, we think the coyotes got 3 of them.
Wow. That's pretty good.
The old timers would settle for a bottle of water and a banana very early in the morning. The young bucks held out, and they had to tackle them, so that was it. But that was an interesting event. One time while I was there, I was outside 45 minutes in the hallway. They wanted a particular person to be hired for a particular responsibility. Turns out that the Secretary of Agriculture is on the board here, all right? And the Secretary of Agriculture in New Mexico reports to the President of New Mexico State. And they were all in agriculture and so on. And they had somebody that they wanted. And I didn't want him. And so I was outside for 45 minutes. I said, either you're running this damn place or I am, so you guys decide. Okay? It was sort of exciting. so they I remember they said some colorful words when they invited me in, but I knew I'd won. And the guy I picked did a good job. Did a good job. But so we had, let's see, I guess we had 3 total times when I was at New Mexico State that what I would call we played for all the marbles. If you don't do this, I'll resign. And I always, as I did here, I always resisted having a contract. I would never have a contract. I said, each meeting, you decide whether or not you'd like to have me be president, and as president, I'll decide whether I want to work for you. So that's the way it is in the private sector. I said, I don't want you trying to tie me down to any damn contract. So that was the way it was. And we had finally, forgive me, Father, for I've sinned, was able to convince a guy to take those chimpanzees. So that was a signature accomplishment. We were our motto was, we are the university of choice in New Mexico. We were going faster than UNM. Things were, God was very generous. And we had a little fundraising campaign, a small one, but so we were successful in that. And so we were fortunate. Had one other little thing that I'll try to make it short. I was out of town, and when I came back, the guy walked in and said, Mr. President, something I need to tell you. And I said, what's that? And he said, well, we had a sort of an art museum there. And he said, the president always signed contracts. And New Mexico State was a Research One university a long time ago. Neither OU, I was approached about the presidency of OU when I was there, came here and interviewed about it. In fact, I have a story about that, but we'll save that for another time. But the bottom line of it all was because of we were very close to the Rio Grande, but in a desert environment. So we had like the MSEP, Egypt Major Serial Improvement Program, was $100 million. The program was. And then we had work in Yemen, Saudi Arabia, places like that. And the board had a policy, I guess I'm going to get back here in a second. The board had a policy. The president signed all major, tiny ones that didn't sign, but all major contracts the president signed.
Mm-hmm.
And you better know what the hell you're committing to here. And B, if you'll send faculty there, you ought to be willing to go yourself.
Hmm.
So I went to Egypt. It was sort of interesting. Had a lady running the program that I wanted to run the program. And remember the guy from Egypt, I was impressed. He had 3 phones, a yellow phone, a white phone, and a red phone on his desk. I guess he was a minister for agriculture or some damn thing. It was a big mogul. And we got to know each other a little bit. And he said, you know, in the Muslim world, Jim, we can't have a woman running this program.
Hmm.
And I said, say that one more time. He said, we just can't have Ellen run this program. I said, well, we'll just shut it down. We looked at each other for a long time. He said, I want her to have an assistant who's a man. I said, I think I can go that far. But I said, she's running the program. She's calling strikes and balls in baseball. So it was an interesting moment. And going to Yemen, oh my God. I've never been in any place that was, it was the dark ages. Mm-hmm. Women covered up, and a great moment. A Mormon was running our program, which I thought was interesting in a country that is Shia and Sunni fighting all the time and this sort of stuff. Sort of like the Catholics and the Lutherans in Iowa. But in any event, this is a very good man. And we were in the interior of Yemen. And so I went to visit him as a member of our faculty. Good man. Trying to do God's work as he saw it, make a difference. Mm-hmm. And he said, Halligan, I want to completely change the research program. I said, well, fill that out a little bit because, you know, we got this contract and I'm going to have to talk to the contract monitor and we're going to have to, you know, wiggle this thing around if you want to change it, okay? And so I said, so what's the deal? And he said, the women do all the work here. These guys sit around and chew this thing called cotton, BS each other. He said they treat these women like dirt, but they're the ones that really do all the work. They're the ones that feed the kids. And we had what would be a research facility down in the valley. Mm-hmm. And the women would come and sit up on they couldn't touch it for her. Okay, that was a sin to do. We had some to our house when I was in Las Cruces, and I came home unexpectedly and I had them at the house. They had all run and hide, so I couldn't see them and so on. But anyway, so it was just unbelievable. But anyway, so they would sit up there in these black things, hotter than hell. He said, you know, we're using hybrid corns and specialized chickens and so on. He said, we're going back to the days when there was no hybrids. And so we changed it completely, long story short. And he would plant things that would self-propagate. In other words, you could plant the seed and get the same thing. Mm-hmm. Or if you plant a hybrid, you get crap, okay? You don't get a hybrid seed, won't give you a hybrid. And the same thing with chickens and so on. And so he would, I don't cry when I think about it. He's such a good man. He would plant all these things, and then he'd take all of his people, and they would withdraw. He'd see them up there, and he'd go. What a good man. So they would all withdraw. He'd walk back out and he'd go to the women and he'd go,
Wow.
and they'd all come down, they'd harvest the crops and take the seeds with them.
Mm-hmm.
And that way he was putting a whole new germ pool out into the very anal canal of Yemen.
That's amazing.
Isn't that a great thing to do?
Yes.
How insightful of him. You know, he had a guy there with this big long pole he had to lift up for us to get in, the guys with guns at this side and guns at this side,
Wow.
you know. And what a good man trying to, but it was so right. In other words, the chickens had to be able to self-replicate. I mean, it couldn't be the damn leghorns we were getting from Denmark. I mean, it was quite a deal. So in any event, so we were a Research One university when they were the OU or OSU were. Okay, we did a lot of research and had a research institute called the PSL that had 400 employees.
PSL.
Physical Sciences Laboratory. And the big balloon projects where you put balloons up into the atmosphere, we did that because White Sands, and I mean they got an 80 by 40 mile strip of land there that you can do stuff in, and people don't see you doing it. That's right above you. So at any rate, so that was very good for us. But the time came, and I said they were very good to us. They would say, "What can we do for you, Jim?" And I'd say, "Give me an annuity that will pay Ann in case I die." You know, and so we were fortunate in that regard. And because when you're working so hard, you don't need any money. I mean, you're just always close. And but at any event, so I said, I got to stop. And so I called up Hydrick and Struggle and called him that time, I think. And he said, "Oh my God, Jim." so bottom up, that's vanity. But they, when I came here, as I had been approached about Oklahoma State when they hired Campbell as president. He was president before me. They had approached us very quietly, which is the way to do it. And the guy who was associated with the Regents, the secretary of the Regents, was a know-it-all, and I did a little research and said, "No, I don't want to do it." And so then I was on the President's Council of the NCAA. And so I was going to go to Indianapolis to a meeting. And Hydrick and Struggles guy said, "Okay, do us a favor, we're having a hell of a time getting some people to interview at Oklahoma State. Stop there and interview it." Well, I had turned down the presidency of the University of. And because I thought the board was, I didn't like this structure. And so they had said, "For God's sakes, Halligan, what the hell what are you looking for? I mean, come on, you know?" So I knew Bill pretty well, and he said, "Get your backside over there to Tulsa, okay? Stop on the way to Indianapolis." And so I did, and I said, "Noses in, fingers out." And I came to Oklahoma State. So we stopped there and let you do something else, and what time it's convenient for you or whatever.
Yeah, we can do that. Okay, tell me again the name of the program that Egypt and
EMCIP, Egypt Major Cereal Improvement Program.
Egypt Major EMC.
CIP, Egypt Major
IMC.
Cereal
Okay.
Improvement Program.
Okay.
What it was, have you ever been to Las Cruces?
I have not been to Las Cruces.
It's a strange place because it's deserts in the Chihuahuan Desert. And we went into Mexico 15 times or something like that. We became, because the Rio Grande is just a ditch. I mean, you can walk across it half the time, okay? Or you can go across a little tiny boat easily. So there were always kind of problems in Las Cruces. Being in the desert, they grow carrots and lettuce, and they grow all the cash crops. A lot of chilies, hatch chili, a lot of chili and pecans, lots of it. And so there's something called the Elephant Butte Irrigation District. There's a big dam 100 miles north of Las Cruces on the Rio Grande. And so after that, they just control the flow all the time. Okay, they store up all the water there, and then they let it out. And so having a water allotment's a big deal, and you can use it to grow very, very valuable crops, which they do. And so we used to go into a bug doesn't know that the Rio Grande is an international border. So we had to go to Mexico, and both for cattle, brucellosis is a big problem. Cattle, okay? You can't have brucellosis doesn't say, hey, there's a little creek here, I'm not going to go across it. So we had to get in contact with those guys in Chihuahua City, okay? Right at the border is just chaos. Just, oh my God, it's just unbelievable. But if you get 50, 60 miles in, it starts to be human again and so on. So we went into those guys, and they were more land granty than we were total land granting. I love land grants. And so the bottom line of it all was we would go in there because we need to cooperate, okay? So we are going to, et cetera. And they were terrible funding. So whenever we would give them our old computer mainframes, we sent the computer guy, we had a big computer mogul down there to help them get things to actually run and all that sort of business. We became great friends with them, great friends. The rector and I were, Carlos and I were great friends. They actually had a condo in Ruidoso, Carlos and Maricel did. There always was a worry that the domestic situation would become so chaotic in Mexico that they would have to flee to the United States. And if you were going to have a baby, you would come to the United States because they got citizenship. So, I mean, we got to know them that well. I mean, we knew the story. But in any event, and he was the rector there. And so we tried to cooperate because it's no good for us to have this strategy here among our pecans, but you guys aren't doing anything there. And he says, well, I don't have the money and I don't know what the hell this bug is, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, well, I'll send our guys down, we'll do the deal. And so it worked out pretty well. But in any event, Las Cruces, it is always astonishing to people when they see how much agriculture there actually is in the desert, but it is all high value agriculture. So we loved it, and they were very kind when we left. I think I can say this now. I don't know who would be looking at this. When I left, I didn't quite qualify for retirement in the New Mexico system. So the board said, I'll tell you what, you're just going to continue to be an employee with us until this is what your assignment is. You got to work on the board, the governing board documents, et cetera. These are your assignments. And you can both be president there and be doing this for us. So I retired from New Mexico State, but I came here after a year. So they were very, very kind to us. They were wonderful people. Some of the Hispanics are just, now Ann would say that the roundhouse, Ann would say the legislature in New Mexico was the toughest legislature we ever interacted with.
Mhm.
Racial politics are really strong there, really strong. So it was, but I always stop. I always thought they deserved it. By that I mean the white people just. It was not good what happened to the Native Americans
Anywhere.
anywhere, nowhere.